Hi everybody, Az here from HeelvsBabyface. Feast your eyes upon the charts of beauty. Don't know where that came from. That was a bit weird. Anyway, these are the UK video gaming charts for the week ending 18th of May of this year. The charts for the 25th of May aren't available yet, probably because it's a bank holiday weekend. Yay! Here in the UK, he says still doing videos, so it doesn't really matter for me. But just superficially, this all looks rather good for Avalanche and id Software and Bethesda, because Rage 2 has entered the charts at numero uno. But you've already read the title for the video, and you've already seen the thumbnail, so this doesn't paint the true picture of what is really going on. So let me jump to this article here from gamesindustry.biz, and this will be linked in the description box down below. Now, despite charting a place higher than the first Rage, which came out in 2011, the sequel hasn't come close to matching the original. In fact, Rage 2 physical sales are just a quarter of what the Xbox 360, PS3 and PC game managed. Ouch. Now, he does go on to say that, in current day, digital sales are playing a more important role, and recent digital data suggests that they can account for up to 50% of the actual sales. So if we were to be exceedingly generous here and give the full 50% on top of the physical sales, it still sold half of what the original Rage sold on its first week. Now that in itself is terrible, but it's going to get much worse. You see, the original Rage, back in 2011, came out on a Friday. So the sales were just for a very short period of time, whereas Rage 2 came out globally on the Tuesday. And so it had Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday additionally to get sales, which the original didn't have. And it's still up to a maximum, because it might not be a maximum, and I've got a feeling it's probably not close to 50%. At best, would only do 50% of the original sales of Rage. You also figure in how much the gaming industry has grown since 2011 in those 8 years, and this can only muster, at absolute best, half of the sales with 3 additional days than the original version. This is pretty disastrous, to say the least. Now, why this gets even worse is the first Rage game came out to relative, not a critical acclaim, but it was critically well received, I think is a better way of putting it. I think it got approximately 8 out of 10s across the board. I think that's what its Metacritic score ended up being, around 8 out of 10. However, it didn't quite hit the mark with the gamer. And although it had some decent first-person mechanics, which seems to be the exact same thing I'm hearing about Rage 2, the actual shooting mechanics are very good. Just full disclosure, I ain't bought Rage 2. The game was a bit of a mess in terms of the vehicular additions to it, and the fact that they were trying to juggle this big world with a pretty weak story. Is it just sounding like Rage 2 again, all over again? Yeah, with a pretty weak story and no true direction. And at the time, it had quite stiff competition from games like Borderlands and such. And Borderlands was a real fun first-person shooter and a real fun experience with some pretty interesting story tagged on to boot. So back in 2011, Rage didn't live up to expectations, and even the co-founder of id Software, John Carmack, he did say that it misstepped, and it was quite clear from the way that he was treading around the subject that it underperformed. It easily underperformed. And as of 2012, Rage had racked up a worldwide total on all platforms of about 2.31 million units. Not terrible, but definitely not living up to the expectations that they wanted it to be. Rage was touted to be a AAA title, and it came out being a kind of standard title. And it very quickly fell by the wayside, and it very quickly left our, our brain, our memory. And so, in terms of a sequel, again, John Carmack could not commit back in 2011 to that. And where are we now? 2019, when a sequel is made. And I have heard the argument, and I hear the argument, and I have heard the argument that was this a sequel that was really necessary? I mean, if you were going to bring Rage back and call it Rage 2, call it the sequel to the original game, then to me, it really had to have something special that was really going to set it, against others. It was really going to set it apart from the other first-person shooters out there. We'd had a lot of drivel when it came to live services because they are set up to fail. And Rage 2 had the opportunity, because it looked fun. I mean, from all the little snippets that they showed off, it did look fun. But again, it was a game that, although you could play just the base stuff offline, you'd have to be online to get other stuff. And it didn't seem to hit a chord with people. The story seemed to be weak. The gunplay was excellent, but the world was big and boring. And unfortunately, again, in current day, we've got way too many big and boring games out there. Hell, Anthem haven't even tweeted out for over a month. I think the last time that the Anthem Twitter account tweeted out was something in regards to the delay of the roadmap going forward, and when they've got something to report, they're kind of like be in touch. But you've got a game that came out in mid-February, mid to the end of February, depending on when you picked it up, and here we are just 3 months down the line, and they're shutting up shop in terms of communication. The live service, the open world, this promised wonderland, none of these titles are delivering. Fallout, Anthem. Now, Rage is slightly different in terms of that, but it's still trying to tout itself as a live service. It's still trying to tout itself as a game that you'll get benefit from if you're online all the time, and therefore can be marketed to, and therefore can be sold to. But when your game is boring, it doesn't matter how good the gun mechanics are, it's not going to hold people's attention. And then, on top of that, I just want to put you back to something. Remember when I did the video about Paul Tassi saying that he created the article for Forbes where he said, I've enjoyed what I've seen of Rage 2, but I've not seen any marketing. I didn't even realize it was coming out this week. And so he did this article about that. And then the Rage Twitter account replied to him by saying, and who are you? Which was rather interesting, because some other gaming channels, gaming because they know it's of interest at the moment, was kind of defending the Rage 2 Twitter account, saying that, they were memeing and they're having a go at the journalists and all this sort of stuff. But the simple fact is, Paul Tassi had a very legitimate point. The marketing for Rage 2 was really poor. Really poor. I couldn't have told you when it came out, and I'm doing this every day. I'm looking for bits of information to talk to you about, to make an interesting video, hopefully, for you to enjoy. And I didn't even know it was coming out. I knew it was coming out soon, but I wouldn't have been able to give you a date. I'd just seen little snips here and there from last year E3 and then a little bit of playthrough towards the end of last year, and then it was coming out sometime spring of this year, but I couldn't have nailed down a date. And so the response by the Rage 2 Twitter account proved, you know, it's just proved to be exactly what Paul said. Poor marketing would have absolutely contributed towards this. Absolutely contributed towards this. And instead of trying to push those last minute sales, getting that release date out, you know, maybe doing a little bit of pandering to Paul. He's at Forbes, regardless of whether you like it or not, is irrelevant. You know, if you do a little bit of pandering, well, it's coming out on this date, Paul, looking forward to your review. We think we've got a decent game. Just something along those lines. It creates a little bit of good faith, and maybe Paul does another little article, another little tweet that goes out to, you know, his demographic, which says, oh, you know, here we go. But no, they chose to be confrontational, and now it looks like they've got a huge flop. A huge flop that went on top of their flop, which isn't great for Bethesda at all, because Bethesda are already, I know they're acting as the publisher here, but they're already up shite creek. I mean, id Software at least have other things to fall back on. They've got other great franchises to fall back on, and maybe just Rage isn't going to happen. But they've got, you know, they've got the Dooms and they've got their Wolfensteins and all that sort of stuff. So they've got good things to at least work towards. And Doom doing great stuff at the moment. That seems to have whet people's appetite. But yeah, I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You get confrontational with people who can signal boost your product. You don't market it to the gamer. Guess what you got? You got another big fat flop. You know, I'm not trying to be nasty here, but when you act like this, it is very difficult to have sympathy. It really is very difficult to have sympathy, because we're getting a bit too jaded now. I mean, we are. We're just, because we're seeing the gaming companies act just like arseholes all round. So even if the Rage 2 Twitter account was just trying to do some banter, was just trying to kind of like meme him or whatever, it's not coming across well. It's not coming across well. Not with everything going on with EA and Activision and Bethesda and all that shite. And particularly Bethesda should have learned. You know, maybe they don't have any control over the, you know, whichever person is looking after the social media account. I don't know if it's from Avalanche, id Software, or from Bethesda. But they should know better in the wake of everything that's been going on to promote your bloody product properly. So, yeah, it looks like Rage 2 set to become a huge flop, and I'd be very interested to see the sales figures for this week just gone. Whether or not it's maintained its position at #1, or if it starts dropping, because we know sales are already poor. If it starts dropping, oh dear me. But I said in my previous video, I don't think this is sold well. I don't think this is sold well at all. And it looks like I'm right. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do get a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links are in the description box down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.